What's going on, YouTube? It's Desert here. Been about a week since I've done a video. Been busy. But anyhow, today the Team Legit 3S battery showed up. So, that means only one thing. It's time to go ahead and move forward with the modification. Take those little bitty teeny tiny 6 amp ESCs out of the Babyhawk and install the 12 amp ESCs so that we can safely run 3S and 4S. So I know some of you guys that have been watching the channel, you've been waiting on this. So we aren't going to dig around. We're going to dig right into it. I will add that the 3S batteries are going to have a full review after I spend a little bit of time with them. And we are in the middle of a weekend of 4 days of rain and misery here in Ohio. So in between, the rainstorms, I'm going to try and get out there and do at least a punch out video to show a comparison of the 2S and the 3S with the punch out. But as far as flight footage, that's going to come probably here in the next week. We'll have some full-blown craziness with the 3S going on and some flight footage. And then we'll also, after I get to spend a little bit of time with these 3S 350 milliamp batteries from Team Legit, then I will have a couple words to say about those, see how they hold up, see if they sag, such and such and such. All right, so anyhow, let's get into tearing the Babyhawk apart and go to the step-by-step portion of the video where we get the ESCs changed. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to remove the props. I only used 2 screws, never saw the need for 4 screws in the prop. So we'll go ahead and remove those. Okay, so next we're going to do the arms from the camera mount. Okay, so our next step is we're going to undo these clips here. And in order to undo those clips, we have to do these 2 screws right here and right there. Now we can come up and these clips on the side, we can pop them up one by one. And the reason we're going to do that is because, as you can see right in here, the mount for the camera case has a couple little nuts, and we need to get those loosened and hold those nuts in place while we do it. Now that we've got that done, I'm going to take a little tiny screwdriver, flathead, that you would use from, say, like a glasses repair kit. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pry very gently on either side to get this plug out of the camera. Once I have the plug out of the camera, we're going to go ahead and pull this up off of here so that we can get a look at the ESCs. Now, depending on where you have your receiver mounted, so I'm using the Lemon DSMX satellite receiver, I'm going to undo the plug on it, and that will let me pull the entire camera mount system up off of the quad so that we'll be able to get at the ESCs. Now we have the camera part separated, and now we can go ahead and pull the plate completely up off. Okay guys, so the next step is to go ahead and get out your Emax Bullet Series 12 amp ESCs. And we're going to go ahead and open one of these up, and we're going to remove the wires that are on here, because we're just going to solder it right in place as we disconnect the other one. The 6 amp ESC, we'll disconnect it and solder these right into place. We're going to go ahead and remove all of these wires. I want to make a quick little point here. If you are using a helping hands, always make sure you watch where you're clipping on the clip to the chip. You don't want to crush any kind of capacitor or anything. So you can see here that I'm going to go for right in this area, because there is nothing there on either the top or the bottom. There where I can clip on that edge and not damage anything. So keep that in mind if you're using a helping hand. Always be conscious of where you're clipping on, especially on small electronics. And repeat that process on the other 3 ESCs, and then we'll be ready to start to disconnect the 6 amp ESCs from the Babyhawk and then connect the 12s. Okay, next what we're going to do is I took a pair of tweezers. We're going to come in here, we're going to grab the little tiny sticky foam pad. We're going to remove that off the 6 amp ESC, turn it upside down, set it on the table because we're going to reuse them. And then you're going to grab the ESC and pull it out to the side. If you want to, you can take the prop guards off. The prop guard screws on the bottom are 1.4 millimeter. Absolute good luck in finding one of those. I've heard a couple people about it, but I haven't heard back yet, and nowhere in my area has those. So for the sake of right now, to get this done and explore 3S and 4S, I'm just going to go ahead and do it the way it sits. Also, let's take note here too that this end with just your 3 pads is going to be your motors, and then on your right side is going to be red, negative, and yellow as signal. And then here we have red on the right side, signal in the middle, and then negative on the far left. Now I want to note the direction here of the ESC. This end with just your 3 single individual pads is going to be the ones that go to the motor, and we're going to move the red to the right, the negative to the center, and then the yellow represents your signal, and that's going to go on the far left. And then back here on the back end, as you can see, we have red's going to go here, yellow, which is signal, is going to go right there, and then we're going to put this negative also over here, even though we did have a negative there, but they're both the same negative. We're going to go to the bigger spot. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. I'm going to do the best I can to keep my hands out of the way. If you don't have a helping hands of some sort, I highly recommend that when you're doing any kind of small soldering work. Okay, and then for the sake of time, we are not going to, film doing that with each ESC, but hopefully that will show you if you need to rewind and you need to pause and see how the 12 amp ESC lines up, just for reference sake. If it's the first time you're doing something like this, please rewind and pause the video and do that same process on each one of the ESCs while replacing and putting in the 12 amp version. Also want to make a point of please note that the 12 amp is not as narrow as the 6 amp is. 6 amp is a very narrow little chip, and the 12 amp is wider. So I don't know if these are going to sit how these are going to sit in there exactly, whether they're going to be sitting a little sideways or whether I'm going to have to put a little piece of something underneath of it. But we'll get to that here in a second as I go around and do all these and get it all soldered. And then just a quick little video clip right here showing the 12 amp reconnected so that you can see the wire layout one more time. And we're going to go around and do the rest of them. Okay guys, so I've come to the conclusion here that since the 12 amp ESC is wider than the 6 amp, and I think I showed that before, but I will show it just one more time here. There is a pretty good width difference. The canal in the frame, as you can see here, is narrow, so this is a lot wider than where the other one's set down in. So what I've had to do is I've had to modify the frame with a Dremel tool, and I wanted to keep as little modification done to the actual frame here as possible. So I started with the top plate, and let me slide this over here and we'll move the top plate in. I'll show you what I did. As you can see right here, there is a vent that sticks up out, like a little casing around where the vent shafts are. So what I did is I took the Dremel and I carefully came in here and I smoothed all of that out. It did not change the look of the frame. I was very careful to do it, but that definitely helped. So that's the first step that you're going to do is you're going to take a Dremel. I'm using a little sandstone, which I'll show here in a minute, and I smooth that out, and then I take a little tiny screwdriver and chisel any of the plastic off that's left on there from shaving it off. Okay, the second thing that I did, which I was hoping that was going to be enough, but it wasn't completely enough. So if you look right in there, right here, you can see how I came in at the crack where that V, a little bit before where that V starts, and I shaved that down just on that little tiny thin plastic edge. And you can see also on the next one over, right here, that I did it again there. And what that does is the one part of the ESC, and I tried multiple different directions of setting it in there, because once it's wired, you can flip it over. But the best fit that I was able to get was with the ESC, as shown here. Get that wire out of there. And then there's a little tiny notch, like a little diode on that edge, so that's why I trimmed that out so that it sits flush. And then when you combine that with the trimming of the top plate vents, as I just showed, it will snap down on there smoothly. So now keep in mind, I want to also make a point of this is a very early model of the Emax Babyhawk, and I don't know if that has been changed on the latest production batch that's being sent out, because, you know, Emax has not came out and said straight up, I'll make that clear, they have not came out and said, hey, this supports 3S. It's a 2S quad. It is capable of 3S by upgrading the ESCs. So that's what I'm doing. I want to make a point of saying that this is some tedious work here. You're talking about shaving on the plastic with the Dremel. So, you know, a very steady hand is required, and you don't want to weaken the frame as much as possible by doing this. So I want to make a point that, you know, Emax has not marketed this as a 3 or 4S quad. They've marketed it and sell it as a 2S quad. So this is a total modification, installing the 12 amp ESCs so that we can do 3S and 4S. And so keep that in mind. There's nothing against Emax for the way they have things designed, because it's designed as a 2S. And then here's my Dremel, and the tip that I'm using, it's just a sanding stone. It comes to a point. So that's what I'm using to do this. You could probably do it in a couple different ways. be ingenuitive, but this has been a simple, easy way for me to do it. And I recommend, trying a Dremel. If you got a Dremel, that's an easy way to do this. Put an attachment on there and carefully go at it. Hey guys, all right, so we got it all assembled back together, and the next step is going to be to go to BLH Heli Suite and to get the ESCs calibrated, and we're also probably going to do a calibration in Betaflight. So we're going to switch over and show you guys how to do that. Before I do that, I want to make a point of a couple little tips that I forgot to film here. And one is, make sure you before you put your ESCs in there, and I forgot to do it because I've been working on this thing for every spare moment that I get. I didn't put the shrink wrap on the ESCs. So what I did is, some of you will probably remember to use your shrink wrap, some of you will probably not. If you forget to use the shrink wrap, all you need to do is, I think you can see if you look right in here, you can see a little bit of black electrical tape. So I just cut a little piece of black electrical tape, and as I was putting the top plate back on, I just took a pair of tweezers and set that in there on top of it, and then smoothed it out over top of it, just to protect it from, bumping against anything or any possible shorting happening. You do have to have these ESCs to 12 amps. You're going to push them back up in this section of the arm. So the corner end of them is underneath the board. So while I don't believe that there's any way with it closed up for them to come up and touch the board, just for added precaution, I did go ahead and put the black electrical tape on there. Another quick tip too is, when you're reassembling, as you set the ESC in there where you did, your modding to the case, make sure to take something flat, be at the end of, something like this, or even the circle end on a small screwdriver, and push them wires down will help the ESC sit flatter in there, so that when you put the top on, it's a little bit easier to arrange them before you snap the top on and then put the screws in it to bolt it together. So that's something to keep in mind. It wasn't too bad for me once I got the wires flattened out and had the ESCs pushed back up in the upper part of the arm towards the center. It snapped together pretty well, and you can see I got a good seal after doing my mod all the way clear around it. So no issues there whatsoever. All right, let's move on to the BHL Heli settings and go through the calibration, so that if you guys don't know how to do that, you have it, in front of you, so you can follow that step by step. And then we'll switch over to Betaflight and do the calibration there too, just to make sure that everything's good. I will say that I'm pretty sure that we're going to have to switch motors 2 and 3 direction, because we just hooked them all up, and if I remember correctly, on the 6 amp ESCs, they were reversed 2 and 3. So we're gonna have to go into BHL Heli and reverse those. If some of you guys know how to do that, then you can skip this part. Just keep in mind that you are gonna have to reverse your 2 motors and check them. Okay guys, so here we are at the BL Heli Suite, and if you don't have this yet, I recommend that you get it. It's invaluable, especially if you're doing builds and you're installing ESCs or anything like that. It's something that you should have on your computer. And if you look down in the description below, I'll have a link to it so that you can just go right there and grab it and install it. So the first thing we're going to do is, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take the Babyhawk, we're going to plug it into the USB on the computer. I've already got mine plugged in, and I'm running on COM 7. You need to make sure you know what your COM is, just in case it should pick it up, but if it doesn't, you need to make sure that you have it set on COM 7, or not your specific COM that your quad is using. So if you would have trouble connecting, make sure that you're on your correct COM. So I'm going to go ahead and click connect, and then I'm going to plug in my battery to the Babyhawk, and you hear da-da-da. And then I'm going to go ahead and read setting. And we see that we have the master here, and then all the other ones are set as slave. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, now I've already changed mine, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to change yours. If you right click with your mouse, it's going to show one individual single ESC. So number one, if you follow the wiring that I did and do it the exact same way, number one is going to be right here, motor direction normal. And you're going to click on number two. Number two is going to be reverse. So for you, it's going to be here. You're going to move it over to reversed, and then you're going to click right setup, which I've already done. So then we're going to come over here to number three, and you're going to do the exact same thing with it. It's going to be on normal. You're going to move it to reverse, and then you're going to click right setup. And then four will be normal. So when you look at all of them and you enable them all, you should have 1 and 4 in normal, and 2 and 3 are going to be reversed. But you can see if I just highlight the number, it's showing me motor direction reversed. Number 3, motor direction reversed. Number 4 and number 1 are normal, so it doesn't say motor direction reverse. One thing that I did too, and you may want to check something that you may want to do. I don't think it's necessary. The 12 amp ESCs, the bullets ship with 16.4. The FIM2 board, I do not believe supports D-Shot. If they do change that and it's able to support D-Shot, then we'll do another video and I'll switch over to D-Shot. Right now I'm going to stay where it's already at was at on the 6 amp ESCs, which is 1-shot 125. So I don't think that there's any need for you to update that. If you want to, go ahead. The newest version as of the release time of this video is 16.6 for the BL Heli software on the ESCs. Okay, so then after we got those reversed, we're going to come over here to the motors tab. And this is where we're going to do our calibration. You're going to come down here, you're going to click I understand, and make sure it says here in big red letters, make sure you take the props off. Not my fault if you lose a nose, quad hits you in the face, you know. Click understand, and then right here we have calibrate ESC. So we're going to go ahead and calibrate the ESC. I'm running my settings on Betaflight are standard, so the minimum throttle is 1070. So I'm going to set this at 1070. And then I'm going to click OK. And now you need to disconnect your battery from the Babyhawk. And then click OK. Now you're going to power it on by reconnecting the battery. And then you're going to click OK. When it gets done, you're going to hear that sound. That's telling you you're done. And then you can go ahead and come over here to your motors. Give them a little bit of juice there. Make sure, as soon as you hit 1070, they should start to spin. So you're good there. You can go ahead and unclick that. Come back over to SL Lab setup. If you want to, you can go ahead and connect again, read setup, just to double check, make sure that everything's master, slave, 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 and that your directions are correct. Now we're going to move on over to Betaflight. We can go ahead and close down BL Heli suit, and we can go over to Betaflight. Got your battery disconnected from the drone. Fire up Betaflight. We go ahead and connect. We're going to come down here to the motors tab. And I'm not, everybody has their own way of doing this, so this is how I've done it. If you prefer a different way, by all means, feel free to do a different way. But I also am going to go here and I'm going to calibrate the ESCs in here also. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click the understand. Still got your props off, so you're not a stupid idiot getting hit in the face with the drone. And once you do that, we're going to take the master level and we're going to move it all the way up to the top. And then, after we got it all the way up to the top, we're going to connect the battery. And you'll hear it do the da-da-da, and then one beep, which is letting you know that you're into calibration mode. Then we're going to pull this back down. And that's it. Come up, your motor should start spinning around 1070. Double check that, make sure you're good. That was good. We're going to go ahead and unclick this. Disconnect the battery. And we're out of there. All right. So there you go, guys. That should get you through the steps needed to install the ESCs and help you get on your way. One thing that I had to do that I did notice, and I'll go ahead and throw that in here and mention it real quick. Come up here to your configuration tab. Now, for some of you, if you're using air mode, which I use air mode a lot because, you know, when I pull the throttle down, I want the props to keep spinning so that I can still have control of the motors, especially because I like to do a lot of freestyle flight. So one thing that I had to do, and I don't know if it's because I'm going from the 6 amp to the 12 amp, and the 12 amp is a bigger ESC. I've never had to do this before, but I did crank up. I usually run this at 1070. This number right here for your minimum throttle, which is the lowest ESC value when armed. I turned that up to 1085. And the reason I did that was because where I had it set at the 1070 before, when I would kick on air mode, all my motors were not running with just the idle of air mode. And I didn't want to have that issue when I'm doing a flip and come down and the rear two motors aren't running smoothly at idle. So I did bring that up to 1085. You can experiment with that, maybe bring it down a little bit, get it to where, you know, on your radio, if you're using air mode, you throw your switch and you got a nice smooth spin from all four motors on idle. All right, so that's something to keep in mind if you are using air mode. If you aren't using air mode, then you should be fine and not have to worry about it. Unless if you would push your throttle up a little tiny bit and you see one of the motors is not spinning when you first get to that, you know, that range where the motors start to fire up, then you would also want to come in here and adjust your minimum throttle. All right, guys, so there you go. Let's move on. Let's look at some punch outs and the difference between the 2S punch out with the same Team Legit battery, only 2S, and then we'll put on 3S and do a punch out with that, and you can see the difference.